right, call the meeting
Call
to
to
order.
order. 4:53. Is there a motion on the minutes?
So moved.
Any discussion?
Not for me.
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That's unanimous. And no public comment. Okay, our first item is the subcommittee goals. It's listed on here, I ran them by administration. Does anyone have any, I guess, do we need is there a motion on to adopt the goals, or, and then we can have discussion? I'll entertain a motion to adopt the subcommittee goals listed on the agenda here. Does anyone want to make one?
Trying to find the agenda, which is why I can't name it.
Yeah, you want to move second and talk about it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we need, I think
Second.
technically we should do that in order to discuss
That
that.
is correct.
So, okay, moved and seconded?
Yeah.
Okay. Discussion.
So my only concern would be, we're developing a plan to improve math, we're developing benchmarks, but we're exploring the reporting system. That's kind of not a hard goal, if you're just exploring. Develop a proposal, maybe, explore, you can say, well, we looked at it and never came to anything. Yeah, that's fine.
I thought that, I heard you, Tom, say that we were not gonna throw out the current system, that we were gonna develop ways to help parents understand it before we threw the baby out with the bathwater.
I'll
Came up with
clarify.
came up with it, we've heard a lot of comments that the current grading system is not something parents like. And you suggested that maybe if we showed them how to understand it better, that we wouldn't have to necessarily create a new one. I'm not sure I agree with that, although that's one step. I think we may still have to come up with a new grading system, but I'll let you go from there.
Thank you. So what I'm actually proposing is a little more than, you're like 80% there, Ellie. So I would say that, what we're working on is we are actually looking at new software, grade reporting software, that will change the way that we share the information with parents. And we are hopeful that changing the report card, there's a difference between the grading system and the report card. So the grading system is an instructional practice. The report card is a communication tool. So just for the record, I want to be clear that I would propose that we first change the communication tool, because that is a huge problem. I looked at the report card my first few weeks here and thought, oh my goodness, if I received this as a parent, I would be totally overwhelmed. So I would like to see if we can help with the communication tool. Parents would like to know, and I'm saying this not because you haven't heard it, but because it's videotaped and it's for the record. Parents need to know three things. Is my child a benchmark? How do I help my child? And how is my child performing in comparison to their peers? Because it's a completely different scenario if you're below benchmark and everyone else is below benchmark in that area and the teacher is working on it, than if everyone else is doing fine and my child is struggling, right? So it's important to have context to the work. So Patty is already working with a company called Motivis, and with a subsection of the administrative team to look at a new a reporting system. And that's the first step, and that's what the goal should address, is examining a reporting system. I agree with Jamie that it's hard because reporting systems are complex, and all that I want to make sure is that everyone knows that I want to do this once right. I don't want to do it 3 times, right? So if we get into it with Motivis and they come up with a bunch of things and it looks good, and we feel good about it, then we pilot it next year, and then we adopt it. But what I don't want to do, if we get halfway through this with Motivis and we're not happy, and frankly, if I'm not happy with it, I'm going to say no. So I've made it clear the team is working on it to bring it to my office for a look that will then bring it to you. So that's kind of the process that we're going through, because I don't know what's wrong with these grading software this isn't a problem for just us, it's a
No.
problem in a lot of places.
When we replace the software grading system, number one, how much is the new one gonna cost us? And does it cost the same to maintain the new one versus the old one? You know, how much have we got invested in the old one and how long did it last? You know, yeah, you have, I agree, you have to be happy. You have to. But your administrative team certainly has to be happy. If you recommend Motivus, then fine, let's do it, but let's get it off the table.
Right.
And move forward.
It takes time because they're working with us to create what we're asking for. So they are customizing it, and that's they're partnering with us in part because, Patty, tell me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that right now they're not charging us much because they want to explore what our vision is.
They are charging us $0 right now, and I'll get to that. I
I'll
think
let
that's
Patty
item
take from
3
here,
when we
she's-
get it, but they're charging us nothing, and it's a very recursive process. So if we say we want that button moved over there, they move it for us. If we say, you know, geez, we can't see it yellow, can you make it orange? They'll do that for us. If you know, things aren't working, they're willing to work with us, and I'll report more about that when we get to that point in the agenda, but they are charging us nothing because they are looking at this also as a learning opportunity for them. Because like Tom said, there's, nationally, there are very few companies that do grade reporting in a way that people who are outside education can understand what the heck they're looking at. Which obviously, yeah, I mean, it's like, hello, you can like VA anyone?
So
But-
do they know that they have an audience that they have to satisfy?
And that's why this company is a little different, because they're more concerned about the end user being the parent or the guardian than just, this is what works on our end for data.
You're referring to the Motivus as opposed to
Right.
the current
Yeah.
system. Okay,
Or any of the other ones that are out there. They tend to look at it as, this works for us with all of our, you know, programming language, but it doesn't help on the other end of it. So, they're really, they're very responsive, and I'll give you an update, a little bit later.
So in terms of the goals, I think, Gene, you asked a question, could you ask it again, because I might have
Yes,
lost
so
it.
I said, right now it says, explore a new grading reporting system to determine what and how much information is important for inclusion.
So Jeannie, my feeling is that whether we go with Motivus or not, you guys will get a look at what and how much the vision part is so if we get to the end of this year and we don't go with Motivus, which I think is highly unlikely based on our experience so far, that could happen. And I'm way too early to decide. I look at that as a long-term relationship, and it's really important to get it right. So what my point is if we have them bring us, if we get to the point, when we get to the point that there's a draft for you to review and give feedback on, if we get to the point where we feel like it's not tenable, we can at least agree on what's we're shooting for. So I'm thinking about the goal for this year to be visioning. You know, I know that you generally agree with me that parents need to know, is my child at grade level? And you know, how are they in relationship to their peers? What, you know, and at the little lower levels, you might want to know some more things like, you know, how are they doing at recess? I mean, there's gonna be some changes, you know, relationships and things are important too, but there'll be more discussion about that in the future. So what I'm saying is that if we as a team can get to the end of the year and be clear about what we want to get in there, if Motivus can't do it for us, then we know what we're shopping around.
And my only point was the word explore is
Yeah.
nebulous.
Yeah.
So you don't really have to get too far to say, well, we explored it. I prefer that we develop a proposal. I don't know what that proposal will be or what it'll say. It might say, we've investigated Motivus, we've decided not to do Motivus, our proposal for the future is whatever it is. But it's, at least it's an action, as opposed to explore is just, you can not really come to any direction or conclusion and say, I hit my explore goal.
So are we tracking Motivus now to see what they're gonna come up with?
Yeah,
That may be the word track versus explore may be what we need to do.
Or could we adopt the key tenets that we'd like to see in the report card through this process? So what I'd like, I think you're right on, and I think that what I'm saying is that as superintendent, it would be great if you as a committee could help Patty and I to work with administration and parents to know at the end of the year that we're on target for I think we're gonna end up with Motivus, but if we don't, what do we want in there? So that when we look for more people over the summer to start again in the fall, We can say
What
that
are the
we got this
ingredients?
far and this didn't work.
Right.
We should not start the next school year without a new grading system. I guess is what I'd like to see.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we can do it that fast. I would like to, but I've been working in grading systems for 20 years because as a guidance counselor, that was my role. So my whole career has been dealing with grading systems, and I can tell you that I was very confident and comfortable with Power School, which is one company, and I also was very highly trained in another company called Modular Management System, which was a full management system, a student information system. So it did all of the scheduling, all of the report cards, the grading, the database, like, addresses, email addresses, and this was probably 2001, modular management system. And I think that it would be wonderful to start next year, but I want everyone to know what it takes to do that. First, we have to select a system. Then we have to tell them what we want it to do. Then we have to train everyone in the organization to do it well and efficiently on top of reorganizing the whole district.
And
My
training-
vision was that we would start school a year later with it.
Implement a new grading system by the fall of 2021.
Perfect.
Well, that's not, that's.
That's an action item.
It is,
2
but
years.
And
that
a
is,
goal.
that,
That's
I'm
2
not,
years.
I'm not comfortable with that as a goal for our committee for this year.
But to me, if you developed a proposal, that proposal might be, here are the tick marks, and by, so at the end of the year, here's what we're gonna intend to do, here's what the system might, accomplish, and here is the implementation plan. That'd be, you've developed a proposal.
So why don't we just agree that for this year, at the very least, we'll leave this school year with a clearly articulated vision of what will be in the report card that goes home to parents, with a hope that it'll work with Motivis and we'll get both. Right? I think that I love the idea of saying 2021, September of 2021, we're gonna have a new grading system. I'm fine with that. And that's really what needs to happen.
I say that because it's been several years where parents have been complaining. This is not, it's been going on for too long.
It has.
To be honest with you.
So should we say with the intent of implementing a new grading system by the fall of, what was it, 2021?
2021, yeah.
Explore and just keep the rest of this, explore a new grade reporting system and determine. To me, determine is the action item here. Because that's what we have been talking about, that's what we've been emphasizing in our discussions, that the most important piece for us to have done this year is to determine what information and communicate that to administration, what information is important to the parents and what should be included in the reporting. That's why I wasn't uncomfortable with the explore part, because I do agree with you, it's hard to measure.
Right, that's my.
The determine part is more what we were going to be measuring.
You
But
can't
so does that-
manage what you don't measure.
Exactly. I mean, we measurable and attainable goals, that's certainly the objective. Does that, what I just suggested, does that work for you guys
I'm fine.
with the intent of, I have to write it down.
Yeah.
Good.
Patty and I-
2021 or sooner if possible.
Oh, you always have to do that.
The intent
I
of
love it.
implementing a new.
Okay, we'll have it done tomorrow.
If we don't
Why so
include
long?
it, it
You
doesn't
can
get
send the
done.
roll-aids
And I'm
to
fine.
Church
So
Street.
easy not to do it. It is, because there's so many other things that come up, but I see this as a serious priority.
I'll just
Oh,
point out,
absolutely.
and I pointed this out before, but to your point of people that might be watching now that haven't before. Currently, the difference between an E and a P is the phrase analyze and synthesize versus the phrase apply and transfer.
I would have dropped at least 3 F-bombs by now.
Yeah, so, to me, it's gotta be clear what it is that we're saying.
Yeah, I completely disagree and I'm fine with that language for the record.
Alright.
But I have a problem with the report card that we're sending home to parents. It's crazy.
So I'll have to schedule time to come in and you can explain to me how one determines that difference.
Watch Michael Trammell's video from last year.
I did.
Because he did it perfectly.
Yeah, I wasn't convinced.
No, I know, and that's why we're never gonna agree. It's okay.
But no, but you can at least explain to me those words.
Sure.
Okay.
He didn't explain those word differentials, he just
Okay.
said this system's better.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that.
Grade reporting system
Patty will help
discussion
you.
is on the agenda, but we're not still on goals right now, so let's just stay there for right now, so we can get this done.
So you change the wording, correct, on the explore?
I'm changing the wording on C, our goal C, to, with the intent of implementing a new grade reporting system by fall 2021. Explore a new grade reporting system and determine what and how much information is important for inclusion.
Okay.
Is everybody comfortable with that?
I'm good.
Yeah, great.
Okay, so,
I move that we adopt the goals as amended. Jamie, you can second my.
Yeah, I said it.
Thank you.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you. So just for the record, I'll read so the first goal is to develop a plan to implement improved math instruction. And the second goal is to develop end-of-year benchmarks for each grade level K through 6 in math. And then the third one, we already talked about. Okay, thank you.
Do we
Okay,
want to jump to 3, just since we've been talking about that while it's
Yes.
fresh? Yeah, sure, okay. So item 3 was the grade reporting system. On November 8th, I met with the representatives from Motivis to talk about what's going on with the pilot. So just to back up a little bit, we have about, I think, 12 to 15 different teachers from grades K through 12 who are working in this pilot grade book. So they're actually putting in the grades into 2 sections, the one that's being used and this sort of proposed system. So they're doing the work twice to see what it's gonna look like so that they can work with Motivis to develop this. So we talked about what the next steps were for them to do so that Motivis could continue to do the work on the system. And as of today, I've received a basic checklist for these teachers to go through in the system based on some adjustments that the company has made, to go through and see if they could sort of find certain things, do certain things, perform certain functions in the system. And then we also have identified 4 of those teachers to be what we're calling early bird adopters. These are the folks who are naturally, they have an affinity naturally for technology, and they'll go in and they're willing to go in and play around and say, okay, and give the feedback to the company and say, you know what, I'm clicking too many times to get to this. Can you fix that? So they're gonna be working in a recursive process between now and the beginning of January with that company, even across the holiday vacation on different things. And they've got an open, what they're using Slack, an open Slack channel to sort of say, so if I'm on and the developer is on their computer in their office and I'm looking and I'm like, you know, it took me 7 clicks to put in this assignment. Can you fix that? And the developer can go in real time say, okay, watch what I'm doing. Is this better? Yep, that's better. And they put a button that instead of 7 clicks, now it's 2 clicks. So they're gonna work in real time to get some things cleaned up. And at the beginning of January, we've scheduled a day where the company's gonna come meet with all of those teachers to actually have a conversation about how are things going so far? What are you seeing? You know, we heard this feedback, we did this, now we're gonna go on to the next place with the platform, with the software. And then once that's set, Motivis is also gonna be working on the other end of it, which is gonna be what parents would be seeing. So that we could sort of see from that perspective, because the teacher view is gonna be different than the parent view. So they're also gonna be working on the parent view to see what that's gonna look like, and we're gonna try to get some, beta sort of test, you know, fake students, like George Washington, Abraham Lincoln kind of students in there, so that parents could go and look and see, okay.
I was just gonna say, is there gonna be like a parent early adopter kind of thing?
Well,
to
we'll
check it
have
out?
some, we're hoping to have some Chromebooks set up to,
Yeah.
you know, where we've got a group of parents, a captive audience, maybe after a concert, where we could say, hey, you got 5 minutes, take a look at this, what do you think, give us some feedback. Was it easy for you, was it hard for you, you know, those kinds of things. So there's like 2 sort of simultaneous things going on with this, in addition to what we're already doing, because we've got to continue to do regular grade reporting. So, you know, just publicly, since this is on the record, I want to give a huge shout out to those teachers who are agreeing to pilot, because they're doing a lot of extra work. They really are. I mean, they're putting in the regular grades in the system where it's counting, and then they're also trying out something new. So, and it's tough to try something new, and it's tough to, I mean, it might take 10 minutes to put these grades in, now it's taking you 20 minutes, or maybe it's 30 minutes, because you're figuring out the system while you're doing it. So they're doing a really great job, and the 4 people who are gonna be our early birds, and we're really looking forward to seeing what we get, in early January, after that meeting, so we'll have, some more to talk about then.
That's good. Thank them for us.
I will.
I have one thing, Patty. So I was kind of trying to be quiet so she could do this, because she's taking the lead on this,
That's good.
and she's doing a fantastic job. And I trust her totally, right? And I need that right now, because she's handling it. But the idea of bringing computers right to parents, I was like, that is brilliant, right? Letting them look at it in real, that's what it's gonna look like when you get home. Because that's real feedback, right? And I don't wanna hear it from just select parents. I wanna hear it from the parents that might be frustrated but don't say anything. In my mind, the parents need to be able to understand this when it gets to them, right? The teacher end, we can sort out privately.
How the kid is doing.
Yeah, exactly,
No
yeah.
matter what system you use, the parent needs to
Right.
understand what's going on.
And if they don't have feedback while we developed it, then we can't, you know what I'm saying? Like, I want real-time feedback.
Ultimately, the goal would be having parents say, how quickly can you do this? This is great. This is so much better.
And I once again say, send the roll aids to Church Street,
It
because
doesn't look that far off, does it?
For the record, a 4 says, I'm gonna buy you a t-shirt that says that before Jamie, before next
It's
school
only a
year.
year and a half away.
I know.
No, it's not
Don't,
long.
please,
I know.
it's all right.
My meaning being that if they like it so much that they're anxious for it to be coming, then you succeeded.
Right,
Absolutely,
right, hungry, you want them to be
absolutely,
hungry.
right,
Yeah, no, I know.
right.
I like the other interpretation also, but that was my meaning.
Do we have the information about what parents don't like, what they might want? How can we support?
Tom has some of that
administration?
from his conversations with parents, and we're also gathering information. We've got conferences going on, they started this week, and we're picking up information from teachers who are sort of informally gathering it. So, and we know what the sticky points are, and there are even some sticky points that we have as administrators and teachers that we don't like the way things are showing up. And the whole clunky end of the software. But even the clunky end of the software, it's like you're going in and you think you're doing something, and the system says, okay, we spit this out, and you're looking at it going, there's nothing there, it's a white box, so you've gotta go back 6 times. It's those kinds of things that we really need, more efficiency with. Well, exactly, but those cost money, we don't have money in the budget for those, so we don't do that. But, so yeah, we're really working on gathering a lot of that information, and we know, because we've heard the song a few times from the parents, that what we need to fix and what we need to clean up, so.
The reality is that parents are saying exactly what my instinct was when I read it. And I mean, I'm an educator, and I understand exactly what's behind all those grades. I don't want that level of detail with my son's report card. If my son's not doing well in reading, I'll call him up and say, what gives? What's the problem? Let's sit down, what are we gonna do? A report card is supposed to be a document that generates a conversation, not an end-all, be-all, overarching 5-page thing that gives you every detail that, I mean, it's just too long, too convoluted, too complicated. I literally want this report card for most kids to say, this is my child's overarching score in this area. This is where they are. This is what you can do to help them at home. And yeah, most everyone else is pretty much in the same place. Because for 95% of parents, that's enough. And even if it's not, I want people to talk. I want people to have human conversations about their children, teachers and parents. So what I tell people is you should never get something at home in writing that's a surprise. If a child is struggling in reading or math, they should get a phone call from their teacher saying, we're working on something here. We want you to know what it is. Or if their child is really, really bright and excelling in math or reading, they should get a phone call that says, hey, just a heads up, we're looking for some more engaging text that's at the right level for your child developmentally and the right level reading. Because the problem for little kids is that they can read above their social level. So sometimes the the content's not appropriate emotionally, but their reading skills way higher than what the books are at that grade level.
Mm-hmm.
And so, conferring with parents about, okay, well, we're kind of thinking about these texts, this is what this is about, what do you think? And working together, right? It's a community effort to do this for kids. And we often talk about what we're gonna do to change the schools, but I view the reporting process as the bridge between the work of the school and the work of the home. And so it should generate a conversation. Right now, the conversation it's generating is, what does that mean? And that's not really the goal, right? It's so confusing and convoluted. I don't know, have you read one of the current report cards? Have you seen one?
No, I'm talking about parents that had their kids graduate 5 years ago and they're still grumbling.
Yeah,
So I have not seen anything current.
yeah, they're just
Susan
way
is
too
saying
confusing.
the frustration
Yeah.
that some friends had a few years back.
So I think
It was
that
not pretty.
the feedback has been really consistent, that it's just overwhelming, is the essence of the situation. And I think that the teachers feel like, on the other side, what I've heard consistently from teachers is that it's clunky, it doesn't work well. Right, it's time consuming because it doesn't always work, and then we've got Kevin down in tech running around trying to fix it.
Yeah, then there's that other level of clunky where once everything's in and you're trying to do the back end of it, that's even clunky still, and it shouldn't be clunky.
But I would imagine the teachers had to reinterpret the kid in order to fit into one of the pegs on the card.
Well,
No, it's
not
pretty,
necessarily.
that's not a problem, it's more, it literally just will make a mistake and then we have to go back and fix it.
right,
The
or
detail is great on that, actually,
Yes.
that's the one thing that isn't a problem,
Right.
is that the
Interesting.
system's so well done and deeply thought out in terms of all the detail. The problem is more when it's, I guess I would say it's a processing issue, not a product issue.
and it's like
That makes
it's a user
Like, it doesn't always
end
process
issue.
everything that we put in it.
Right, it's a user end issue, like if, you know yourself, you go to a website, you wanna find something, you're clicking 17 different links and you finally find it. It's too much, you don't have the endurance to sit through that, and when you're doing that for, 20 kids, clicking, okay, now I can put this in, get all the way back out, go back in for the next kid. It's tough.
What's the current system?
It is called Wazzle.
Okay.
It used to be
Oh, there you go, name like that, how you
It
go
was Pinnacle,
along,
when my
right?
kids were there, it was Pinnacle.
Pinnacle. Yeah, they changed names, yeah, I know, right?
Wazzle.
Wazzle?
Yeah, okay.
I know one thing. If you want to do this right, you have to begin with the end in mind. Stephen Covey's classic text applies in this situation. So my vision with this is to figure out what we want the system to do. What do we want it to look and feel like? And then everybody else get out of the way, because we're not stopping until that happens. Right, and that's pretty much what Patty and I have talked about, is that if Pinnacle can do what we need it to do at the end, then the new company,
Motivus, yep.
Motivus, then great. But if they can't give us what we need at the end in a reasonable way for teachers to use it, then it's gonna be a no deal, and we can go back at it. By the way, if I ever left education, I would develop software for that purpose. That's a huge hole in the industry. A huge hole.
And it's
Somebody can do that
because-
right.
And it's because you've got one big company gobbling up littler ones, and so everything's very, it's all generic, it's all,
Education is due for a disruptive
Yep.
technology. Right, it's time for disruption.
Yep.
And I can smell it, it's coming. So I don't know if Motivus would be the one to pull it off, but
Well, we're not the big guys, Texas is or California.
right,
And what they want is what will determine what we get,
it can.
unfortunately, that is true.
I'm hoping that we have a disruptive technology that actually upsets that apple cart,
That would be nice.
right? Somebody does it so well that everyone else wants it, and because that's what disruption is. So
Okay,
Do we have any action items, is there anything that administration needs?
not yet. December is kind of a weird month because
it's
there's
3
just
weeks.
a lot
of
going on.
concerts.
I know, a lot of concerts, and then we'll have the meeting
Yeah.
sometime in the beginning of January. I'm always worried about January, February scheduling things, because what you think's gonna happen ends up getting rescheduled 4 times because Mother
Right.
Nature loves us
Yeah.
so much, yeah. So, I would say by the February meeting, we'll have more information for you about that and what our next steps are, maybe some action steps for that.
Okay. All right. Recent media article discussion. Patty had requested that.
Yeah, well, there's so
and
much going on right now, and
articles.
you had sent us a couple articles on, you know, test
Test
scores
scores
being
in
down
New
in New Hampshire, and then, standardized tests in college admissions, and
Right.
I thought that was worth, you know, a discussion.
Test scores first.
Mm-hmm.
And can I just say one caveat? I love to talk about this and I'm happy to do it now, but I would also like to do it again in the future when Bob and Brian can be here because they're kind of running that ship and I want to make sure that they're engaged.
It's not gonna be, well,
I don't mind chatting about it now, I'm happy to, but I just think it's important to, I'll start right off. Like I had a meeting the other day with the principals and I did not know that so we were talking about AP courses and I asked Christine DeRocher, the new assistant principal at the middle school, who came to us from Timberlane, who had a very strong hand in the reorganization of their advanced placement courses. I had her talk about what they did in Timberlane to raise their scores and the rigor of AP. And I explained to people that it's my opinion that people may be voting with their feet with AP because the AP isn't rigorous enough. I don't want to assume causation and correlation are not necessarily the same. They're not connected. So the fact that kids are taking more college courses and they're taking less AP courses is a correlation. But I'm not convinced that the causation, what I'm trying to say is raise the APs up, give them tons of summer reading, change the expectations for how to get into AP, change the pace and make it truly AP paced, and let kids take it if their parents want to override for a quarter, and if they're not doing well, drop down without penalty. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Keep the pace cooking, and then if the kids still vote with their feet, then we know that we did what we could.
Yeah.
But to have it be where there's no summer reading for AP Gov or history or lit, and the rigor doesn't feel to me, from the evidence that I've looked at so far, at the pace that I would expect it to be as a former AP coordinator. My response is, for next fall, I'm telling you that we've got to change, this needs to be done. So I've made that really, really clear. So my question is, you know, I would like to see what that causes. Right? What does that cause to have happen? It will cause one of two things. Kids will take more APs, or we will continue to have the exodus that we're having.
you have to look at it in conjunction with what we're offered for college courses in the high school. As a non-parent in the public, I'm not happy, because I don't wanna pay for your kid to take a year of college in my high school. I don't wanna do that. Not unless we reconfigure what we're doing in schools.
Right.
If we're gonna end education at 16.
Right.
And that used to be an old model back in the day, then fine, and there's a whole nother process, but and I think this is more for New Hampshire, because New Hampshire funds it through the property taxes. And I have a real problem supporting post-secondary education. I really do. As much as I support schools so much, but this bothers me. And I don't have a handle on it. And I'm glad the kids loving it. I have no problem with that. That means the parents need to pony up. They shouldn't be using tax dollars. We don't use tax dollars, in my opinion, for charter schools, or shouldn't, because charter schools don't take special needs children. Phillips Exeter doesn't either. So if I were a parent, I'd send my kid to a private school. I don't have to deal with challenged children. Does it make the kid come out better, in my opinion? Because you have, in the real world, you have all kinds of people you gotta work with and deal with in service, if you will. So those issues come into play when you talk about AP. AP is a different ballgame. Should we be doing more advanced classes to help our kids be better prepared for college? Yes. I have no problem with that. But you see the difference between that and what I consider post-secondary?
I guess,
And I'm not a parent, so I mean, that may be part of the bias.
Well,
I'm not a parent.
let me just say one thing is that I don't have a problem. I just want you to hear, this is more just me speaking to you, that
Yeah.
we're at a weird spot right now where if we continue to have kids in high school, so I have a friend that works at a high school in Virginia or North Carolina. We have had a conference call get canceled 4 times with them for various reasons, some of them which were are reasons. But he works at a high school that is set up to, it's actually housed on a college campus. And it's a hybrid model where the kids earn their associate's degree concurrent with their high school courses, and some of them need a 5th year to do it, right? And it's a program that's set up to reach first generation at-risk kids that were dropping out of high school. And hang tight, because what I'm getting at is that if we're going, there is a point where we're at an exploratory point right now with this whole thing. But Ellie, there is a point where theoretically that you would go to high school for your freshman and sophomore year and then attend college courses and digital courses for your junior and senior year, and it would be offset by the savings in teachers. I need you to hear that I understand what you're saying.
Right,
We're just at the beginning of it. We're not at the tipping point.
That's
The question
fine.
is, how do we?
But we're getting to that tipping point, and I really do believe that, because the college implementation at the high school level is more successful. You could see it in this graduating class. That's awesome.
Mhm.
But
It's
we
evolving.
as Jane Q taxpayer shouldn't have to support post-secondary education.
And
Right,
just to
I want
clarify,
Patty to talk about the money. because
just
you
to
asked about this
clarify,
before.
the courses are being paid for through a grant. So it's not coming out of the school budget. We have a grant that's paying for the kids to take those classes.
See,
This is the,
See.
NECO.
It is.
NECO.
Yeah.
NECO, yeah, right.
It is.
I mean, so there's dual enrollment and then there's AP. We started out talking about AP. I'm not sure what you're having a
I
problem with.
think dual enrollment and AP are definitely connected, because AP is going down and dual enrollment is going up. And you're telling me it's all funded by a grant. You see $100, it's, oh, we have parents to pay. I've been told that parents pay, but they pay $100 a class.
Right, because we have a grant for the rest of it. But what I'm
Right.
saying to you is that you're right, that there's a point where
And then diminishing returns, and it is
Exactly,
definitely, it's
exactly.
definitely related to AP, definitely correlated with AP.
well, what it's correlated
Well,
with
I
is
see
that
them as a slightly different.
they are slightly different. Yeah, because AP courses are supposed to be college level courses that are taught by the faculty at the school.
That's right.
And then you
Those
can
are
receive.
administered in the high school. They've
Right.
always been administered in the high school.
I
And then the kids
understand
have
how
to
it,
pass
I
the test
understand how it
to get
works,
the college credit.
but we have teachers in our school that are teaching college classes here.
Mhm.
And then we have some kids going to Northern Essex or SNU or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So you're having a blend of the systems, it's not a clear cut thing, it's not.
But
It's not.
I like, as far as AP goes, so one of my observations has been that I won't say majority, the inference that I get from the discussions about AP is the administration isn't overly enthused by AP, and maybe AP should just go away.
I'm gonna outright say that's their opinion.
Yeah.
And then I'll own that on the camera.
So.
They feel like it's an antiquated model, and frankly, I would tend to agree with them, because the college boards, my opinion is that the college board is a huge corporation that makes millions and millions of dollars off public schools. The SAT, the AP classes, AP exams, they all cost money.
It's the system that we've been working with, and until that
Right.
system, that paradigm changes,
Exactly.
it has to change.
And that's what I'm saying to you, is that we're on the cusp of a disruption.
But I like your comment that we will reinvigorate it
Mhm.
and assess what that means, because I do think if I can get that inference from however many
Mhm.
EISA meetings that we've been in,
Mhm.
then the kids in the school can get that.
And the teachers.
Yeah, can
I
get that
agree. Yep.
inclination too,
Yep.
and then it's like, oh, why do that? Everything seems to be going in this direction, my friend Betty and Paul are going in that,
Mhm.
just, if you reinvigorate it, you might stir a difference, you might not.
Right.
But it's worth the effort.
Yeah.
And therefore you make a different decision based
Yeah,
on that information.
But I do think it's worthwhile to challenge that belief.
I agree, I absolutely agree.
Okay.
I ran into a friend of mine, in the community whose daughter graduated last year, and she offered to me that a possible alternative to, some of the reasons why kids are not taking new classes, AP classes, is because they're talking to their friends and nobody's passing them. Nobody, I mean, I realize that's not literally true, but
Right.
there's a lot of kids that are not getting credit for those classes because they're not passing the tests. That was not true. I don't have the
Hard
The data.
data, I'd say 5 years ago.
Mhm.
That was my son's class, that general range, but I would venture to guess
It didn't used to be
anecdotally
way.
that was not the
That's not
case.
way, no. That was
That
a
the majority of
bad
kids,
rule.
it wasn't true that the majority of students were not passing. I looked at the scores for AP Government and US History. It's the same teacher teaching that class that was teaching it when my son took it. So, and practically nobody passed the test this year or last year. I don't think that was the case when my son took the class. So I'm just wondering, is
Patty, I'd like you to pull 10 years
either
of
more-
AP data.
yeah.
10 years of AP
Interesting to
data.
see.
I just
That would
wanna
be
know what it
very
says.
helpful.
It's not hard to pull, I'm not giving her like a month-long task.
So is one
It's-
possibility that the kids are just not being as well prepared? That this is a curriculum issue in the lower grades? I would suggest that's a possibility, certainly if you've got the same teacher teaching the class and you're having either more, too many kids are being allowed to take it that maybe not have the foundation.
Kids aren't paying attention.
But something appears to have changed and I don't
Could be the
think
kids, you know,
it's
it doesn't have to be
necessarily
the teacher.
the teacher or the class itself.
Oh, yeah, we're not, we need to put it on
There
a
were phones back then.
smartphone,
Not like now.
not
Well,
right now,
My
absolutely
last
not.
4
That would get
weeks,
us into the
the
iPads
last, the last 4 weeks have rocked my
And
perspective.
floppy disks.
So what I would say is this, I sat the admins down and I told them the following. These are the things that are gonna stay, and these are the things that are gonna go. And the first one that's gonna go is this idea that kids can come into class and say, oh, I don't have to turn in my test today because of the reassessment window, I have 10 more days. Right, if you don't turn it in when it's due, when it's not done well and to the best effort,
Deadlines
you
count.
don't get deadlines count.
Good, thank you.
That was, I gave them a preview of what I'm going to expect once the reorganization is done.
So therefore, the level of proficiency can all happen at the last 3 days of school?
Well, that happened during the early phases of people were, yeah.
Just saying.
No, that actually did occur early on. There are some, how do I say it? Telephone style conversation, the game of telephone, I'm saying this for the camera.
Right.
That people,
It changes, the story
absolutely.
more.
I've heard some
With
wild
each telling.
stories.
I totally get that.
When I did my homework, they weren't, it was like the classic there's 3 sides to the truth, theirs, and something in the middle.
Something in the middle.
There was a lot in the middle,
Yeah.
put it that way. So,
Okay.
but what I'm saying is that the pieces that I feel need to stay, the first one is that seat time is not the constant. Learning is the constant. It used to be if you showed up for class, you were compliant, you did your homework, you could get a 70, right? And this idea that that's not gonna fly is a really good idea. I believe in that, and I know it works when it's done right? And it's the same thing in the world of work. If you don't do it, you don't do it. You don't survive.
You don't get raises and you don't
Right.
get promotions.
And
And you don't get your contract renewed.
yeah, exactly. And I'm like, not wanting to say this, but that is tied to the rubric, and we'll talk about it later, okay? So that is it is a linked thing. But my point is that the philosophy is that if the seat time is the constant, is the learning is the constant, and the length of time that it takes for you to get it is the variable. The idea, which makes a lot of sense, is you turn in your assignments, you do your work, and you try, and you don't quite get it, so we want you to learn it. That's the
Right.
goal, not to fail or pass. Right? And
Right.
that's the real message. But you can imagine how quickly it goes from, I'll use my son's name. Hey, David, come here. I want you to, I know that you understand this math concept. Let's practice this part a little bit more and take a look at it again in 3 days. Here's some things for you to work on. And David goes and does it, right? When I think about my kid, I want that for him. I want him to learn if he doesn't understand it. You can see how quickly that can morph into kids manipulating the system and being at the end of the year like, here are my 16 papers. All I have to do is have my constant. I learned them.
Our little darlings aren't manipulative.
No!
What are you saying?
Right? They don't game the system. So my point is just that I think that in an effort to take our world from a place where it was sit and get and perform on a test to a place of you need to know this or you're going to be in real trouble and I'm going to help you to make sure that you know it. There's been some messiness that's occurred in that process. And Sanborn has been right in the middle of the mess of it. And there are some things that have to change to rectify that. I see that.
My perception would be on deadlines, one is the real world is the real world, and you don't get passes on deadlines.
Right.
But two is.
You mean
you're
I
not-
can't do my presentation tonight and tomorrow because it's not done,
Yeah, right, exactly.
right? I mean,
No,
really,
we're
come
gonna
on.
be here
We're,
to
we're
see
just gonna have to
tomorrow.
put that
My kid says
deliberative
to me the
off.
other day, my kid says to me the other day, I said, Dave, Noah, I went to college for 16 years so that you can have what you have today. And his friend in the car was like, you went to what? Right? The kid just couldn't like contemplate that I went to college for 16 years. The third kid, it was so funny, the three of them, they're characters, these guys. The third one said, yeah, you're like, right, big surprise. The third one says, well, what do you think happens to the other two? Right? Like, what do you think happens when you work that hard and you stuff happens? You get better, life gets better, you excel, right? And so the older kid was talking the other two into like the idea that like that's what you need to do. And it was just fascinating because they just couldn't grasp the concept that you would willingly go to school for 16 more years. So he's 14. It's gonna take me another few years to get that going with him. Do you know what I'm saying? Like his prefrontal cortex just isn't developed yet. I don't worry about it at all. He's gonna be fine.
Your wallet's not developed enough either for 16 years.
I know.
He's got a money tree
And
in the
now I'm
backyard.
doing a
Come on.
doctorate, right? Yeah, no.
But the point I was gonna make on the deadlines is the other aspect of that is, if somebody has taken 4 months to get there, you don't know what else has been involved in doing that and whether they really learned it or not. If everybody's got the same deadline and they put it in, you can see who's struggling versus who's not.
That's right.
And you can better assess.
Right,
what
you
need
can
to
plan
do to
the
help them.
remediation.
Yes.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying with the whole thing with that, and then that's where the intervention process kicks in that I'm working on. That's it. That's the nexus. Right? Whether or not it's a 4 or 3, I don't care. If you don't know it, we're gonna teach it to you.
Great.
But no more participation awards, please.
Look,
Well, and that goes
That
back to
is-
why
that's
we've got,
key.
that's why
you
we've got
actually
the rubrics that
successfully
we've
just shut me
got.
up. That was pretty impressive.
But that goes back to why we've got the rubric we've got, because when you go back to, and I
Oh, she's
was
gonna go
guilty of
there.
this, well, seriously, like, you have an 80 in class, I'll give you, 10 extra points on the test if you bring in the canned goods for the Thanksgiving drive. Well, now I've got your ability to follow through on something that's not academic tied in with your academic grade. So now suddenly you've got an A in the class, but do you really understand the math, or is it because you brought in the canned goods? So that's where you get that sort of inflation and things are getting conflated.
we
which is-
shouldn't allow that.
So we've separated that out so that you're getting a better gauge of, do they really understand how to do long division, or did they bring in, 7 cans of green beans because they can't stand them in the mother,
You need a
it's
pizza
fine.
Friday. You learn that long division, you have a pizza party Friday. That works better than the cans of goods. Because
Absolutely,
now you have, you know that the kids got it.
exactly, and
And
you're
so
not,
you can
you're not
reward
giving
them.
them
That's
points for
okay.
the canned goods,
You
right,
know, Rewards
right.
are good, I'm not opposed to it.
No.
Well, rewards are what happen in the real world.
Exactly, you
That's
get the
exactly-
raise, you get the promotion, you get the next job, you
Sometimes
get
you get the girl, the boy,
the better parking
Both.
spot.
Oh. Tammy, I'm bringing you a gavel to the next meeting. So, I'm buying you your own
She doesn't
personal
wanna use
gavel.
her phone and like banging the phone, we're gonna buy her a new
I can blow your
phone.
mind.
We-
But I might need it for Peter.
I don't dare to give you one, you gavel me.
Oh, yeah, she works.
Absolutely, I'm not afraid of anything.
I know, we know.
Just,
Really?
No way,
the
really?
filters are gone, the older I get, the fewer the filters, that's just all that I can tell you. It's a beautiful thing.
Tammy, how are we doing on time?
We need, I
I'm
probably,
just-
we probably need to.
I
adjourn.
need a bathroom break.
Okay, if you're gonna pull some data on the AP,
Yes,
could you, in addition to the AP scores?
Yeah.
Could you also pull, is it possible to get
The grades.
the average grade or what the,
Yeah.
because that's
of
part
the
of the issue.
students who took the AP,
If it's possible, I mean, I know that might be a lot, but.
that might be harder to get.
It just might take
Because
more
part-
time.
Part of the issue is, or part of the,
There was a correlation between the two.
there are kids passing these AP classes and they're not passing the AP tests. And I'd just be curious to know if that's always been true as well.
For the next meeting,
We may not be able to have
we'll
that.
bring the
in
data
January,
and then
but-
we'll have
I take
Heidi
TVs.
and or Bob here to discuss.
But what I really wanna talk about,
Not necessarily to the granular level, but.
Yeah,
you know,
but Tammy, I wanna go there because I wanna talk about, again, Ellie brought it up, causation and correlation. So here's the big question. If we polled kids about the AP exam, see, we also had a point where we made everyone take it, And there was a time when you didn't make everyone take it.
Right.
And so that's interesting, because it's one thing, the kid may wanna take the class, do the homework, turn it in, and they don't care about the exam. I'm not saying that's always the
There were a
case.
couple, like my son didn't take the AP Spanish test.
right.
Um,
When I was an AP
yeah,
coordinator,
that
it was
was
totally optional.
feedback.
Right.
And the kids paid the fee for the exam.
Yes.
Now we do.
Right.
Yes.
We require them to take the exam and we pay for it.
So
And
that's
it's
gonna
expensive.
change, that's gonna
still-
change your numbers a
But
little
But
bit.
that
still.
has bearing too, because
Like,
if
there
they
were-
have
there
no
were-
interest in pursuing it.
I just
all
wanna
they
know,
have to
I
do
just
is
wanna know
submit
that-
it.
That's probably an element.
I think that there are a lot of elements in it.
Yes.
I think the biggest element-
That's probably.
The biggest element is the rigor. I'm not trying to like go down the road of sugarcoating that or poo-pooing it. The rigor is the problem,
Mhm.
right? Kids should be reading a significant volume of text prior to taking an AP class.
Mhm.
Significant. AP is supposed to be, I am passionate about this.
It's supposed to allow you to skip a grade at college level, it has to be rigorous, if it's not,
Right.
it's useless.
Well, not only that, it teaches them how to be aggressive intellectually. And I don't like the term aggressive, but intense, focused,
Competitive,
competitive.
they have to be competitive, you have to wanna succeed at this. If
Look.
they don't wanna succeed, all they do is make us look bad.
Before we go, I'm gonna leave you with one fact that you need to really think about and what every parent should be thinking of. China has more honor students than we have students.
And why is that?
Just think about
It's
that.
not a surprise, that's an age old, has, since the beginning of time.
But it's the
Because the expectations from the family, the bar is high. It's not, you can do whatever you want, it is not this.
But there's also a lot of people. So when we think about the fact that our kids are going to have to live in that world, India, the population in India,
Yeah.
we're in real trouble.
We're in trouble because we don't have the level of expectation that those two countries have of their children. We
That's
used to
true,
have it from our immigrants coming in,
That's right.
but the average kid doesn't give two hoots.
Right. I just want people to think about
But
it.
it's the parents set that tone, and I'm gonna blame the
But
parents.
our students have, according to studies, a much higher self-esteem than they do in like China or India.
Okay.
So their students sit there and say, even though they're excelling by standard tests or whatever, they don't think they're doing enough. They don't think they're really that good.
Yeah.
Our students don't do so well, but think, man, they're killing.
Well, the other side too, though, is.
I mean, it's an exaggeration, but I
Right,
mean, that's relative balancing of the data
That's
sets.
I mean, we could have a whole day discussion about the correlation between
And more
creativity.
Asian students in our universities and colleges are taking up more and more seats because the bar is higher. At the more expensive schools, I will grant you, because of course they also have the means,
My
and
son
they
goes
make the sacrifices.
My son goes to Thornton Academy and they have 380 to 400 kids from all around the world that tuition in to go to school there with him. $45,000 a piece.
Must be nice.
It's a private school that our community has for hundreds of years paid for the kids to go to, kind of like, I'm sorry,
Pinkerton.
Pinkerton,
Mhm.
except smaller, much smaller, 1,300 students. But he sits in school with kids from all over the world, and he's getting a sense of like, you better pick my game. I mean, his grades have
Very
gone way
lucky.
up,
Yeah.
way up, and their rigor isn't high there. I want to be clear about that. That's a myth, right? The kids who want to do really well there, but the kids who struggle don't do well. So I don't want to sugarcoat that private schools have necessarily more rigor, because you've been through it. You know, rigor
Yeah.
is about the quality of the teacher and the
Yeah.
expectation of the family. I was just gonna say, combined with the family.
That's true.
Yeah, you're right.
That's true.
Thank God Mrs. Ambrose is there.
Next agenda,
You better hope Mrs. Ambrose and I never get together.
next meeting, agenda
Can we go
items.
for January?
You don't think we need a meeting in December?
I would like a break in December. I think
I think that Patty's got a lot of work to do, and I'm fine with that. Like, we've got the grade book thing, there's a lot of work to do. But if you guys wanna meet, it really is fine with me.
Yeah, I just,
Shouldn't, no?
me,
You just shouldn't meet?
yeah.
I mean, I think we could meet a lot more often, because we have pretty lengthy discussions but, I'm willing to.
Well, I will tell
if
you
you
this.
two say we meet, then we meet. I just voiced my opinion and I go with the majority.
I do what I'm told, so
Yeah, me too.
I do what I'm told.
Sure.
I was just thinking it's December and there's a lot
I
to do for the holidays.
Like, I'm happy.
So then let's plan to, we'll look at the goals. What would the topics be that would be, that's my question, is what work will occur to meet our goals if we meet in December? Answer that, and then you guys can decide. That's what I would do.
Start working on action items.
Which ones? Which
You
ones?
gotta have a reason to meet.
Yeah, like what is the,
Not just
what
chit-chat
work are we
about
going to
philosophy.
accomplish in the meeting toward the grade reporting system? So in my mind, that's off the table.
That's off the.
She's working on it.
Right.
That's gonna be, we're gonna need a meeting, a few meetings solely
Yep.
dedicated to that after the work occurs.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
In terms of the math program, where are we at with that, Patty?
We might have something to discuss, but we might not. Because
It
the
depends on what happens
publishers,
with the
right, the
publisher.
publishers are still dragging their feet.
Well, we should
So-
have some test results.
Yes, we probably will,
I
if they,
think so.
if they unembargo some of the stuff, we can discuss some, and if not, the
We haven't
test
had
results, we
anything
can
from
discuss the
elementary
AP. So
I haven't
we
even
can
done-
just discuss the AP, and I think that would be probably a meeting in and of itself.
Oh, it will be, because Bob will be here, you know
Yep.
how Bob feels, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I love Bob, but I know how Bob feels about this issue.
Yeah, so maybe any data that we get and then AP, and I think that's probably
I can't remember the third goal for some reason, can someone just read it to me?
math benchmarks.
Right.
That's a
Yeah,
to-do,
I
that's,
agree.
yeah, that's a to-do.
First two
That's
are
a big
related,
project.
really. The
Yeah,
plan
in
to
December.
implement improvement
Yes,
instruction
yeah.
and the benchmarks.
Math benchmarks is a big one.
We only have 3 weeks.
Yeah, we're not gonna get that, anything movement on that in the next, because you gotta remember that like, between now and the next school board meeting, there's 4 days of work days. So in terms of like answering any further questions after tonight, which I don't think there will be, because.
We have a
the
school board meeting next week too?
What's that?
We have a school
No,
board meeting
week
next
after.
Week
week.
after.
After.
But it's 4 school days because of Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's next Thursday, so school's out on Tuesday.
Really?
No, I'm just thinking, like, people don't realize, like,
The
I'm just
stress
saying
and
that
pressure.
people don't realize that, like, between now and the next board
Most women
meeting.
have known it's
is
been Thanksgiving
in terms of-
coming for 2 weeks, so don't even go there.
Thanksgiving, and then Christmas is literally the break for that, the holiday break is 3 weeks later, it's a weird year is what I'm trying to say.
It's a late Thanksgiving.
Normally
yeah.
there's
Yeah.
four, normally there's
Yeah.
4
Right.
school weeks between Thanksgiving and the holiday, and there's only 3 this time.
Yeah, late Thanksgiving this year, so.
Great.
As late as it can get.
Well, our next meeting is for December 18th, so that should be four.
We should be able to
4 weeks from
discuss
now.
the data on that one, yeah, good.
So we will, we'll work with what we have at that point in time. And if it's a shorter meeting than usual, I guess that's okay, given that we tend to run over anyway. We're adjourned.